The morning after was a tapestry of golden light and tangled limbs. Lyanna stirred first. The curtains were parted just enough to let the soft rays of dawn spill over the bed, painting warmth across Tate's bare back where he lay half draped over her. His arm was still around her waist, his breathing deep and steady, his jaw slack in sleep. Vulnerable. Boyish. Beautiful Dot, she reached up and lightly touched his cheek with her fingertips, committing this version of him to memory, the one who wasn't barking orders, who wasn't cloaked in steel or pride. The man she only saw when the world was shut out. She didn't want to move, but the weight of everything that wasn't said hung between them. Even now, as if he felt her stirring. Tate blinked awake, eyes slow to focus, then sharper as they settled on her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, morning, he rasped, voice hoarse and low. She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his brow. You snore. He looked almost offended. I do not. You do when you're exhausted or satisfied. Smug look crossed his face. So ... both, then? She rolled her eyes and started to sit up, but he pulled her back against him, chest to her back now, his lips brushing the curve of her shoulder. Don't move yet, Tade. No, he murmured. Not yet. Let me pretend this moment doesn't have consequences. Her breath caught, and for once she didn't argue, because she knew what he meant. What they did last night, Tit, wasn't just passion. It was years of frustration, of want, of love neither dared confess aloud. But it changed things. They both knew it. And yet here they were wrapped up in silence. And sweat and morning light pretending the real world didn't exist. Tade, said again, softly this time, turning to face him. What happens now? His jaw tightened. I was going to ask you the same thing. She stared at him, and for once there was no mask between them. No playful barbs. Just two people standing at the edge of something neither knew how to name. I don't want to go back to pretending, she said. He nodded slowly. Then don't. But no, he cut in, firm now. No more hiding. No more games. If this, he gestured between them, is real to you, then say it. Say it now. She looked at him for a long time. Her throat tightened. Her eyes burned. I love you, she whispered. Tad closed his eyes like the words physically struck him. Then he opened them, leaned forward, and kissed her forehead, her cheek, her lips. I love you too, he said, voice rough with emotion. God help me, I always have. They lay there for a long time, foreheads touching, breaths sinking. The world would knock soon. Calls, meetings, expectations. But in that moment, none of it mattered. They had finally chosen each other. Later, that morning, the knock on the suite door was polite, hesitant, sir. Madam, breakfast service. Per your standing order. Lyanna groaned and buried her face into Tate's chest. He chuckled into her hair. You still have time to run. I'd rather they wheel me out in a food trolley than face today. She mumbled. But she sat up, slowly gathering the scattered pieces of herself, her silk robe, her pride, her courage. Tade watched her with something close to reverence. Like she was both a goddess and a storm he willingly walked into. She padded barefoot to the door and cracked it open. The hotel staff entered quickly, rolling in the tray of steaming coffee. Fruits and toasted croissants. Will that be all, Miss Elamine? The server asked, her eyes flicked back to Tate, lounging shirtless in the sheets, then back to the staff. Yes, that'll be all, thank you. The door clicked shut behind them. Tate arched an eyebrow. They know. They knew the moment they saw 2 trays and 1 robe, she muttered. He grinned. You say that like it bothers you. I say it like I know what gossip costs a woman, she shot back, pulling the coffee closer. Especially when her last name is Alamine, and her lover is the man who almost ruined her father. His smile faded. Sat up, chest bare, expression sober now. I didn't ruin your father. I exposed him. You know, it's not that simple, she said. I know it's never simple with us. A heavy silence hung between them as she sipped. her coffee, gaze far away. Then, softly, "My mother called me last night." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Before or after we—" "Right before she said. I didn't answer. I was too busy. ... Being reckless." He looked at her carefully. "Do you regret it?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she set down the cup and walked over to him, slipping onto the bed and into his lap. She placed her hands on either side of his face. "No, I regret waiting this long." He leaned his forehead to hers. "Then whatever storm comes, we'll weather it together." An hour later, the Vidian offices. The elevator doors opened and all heads turned. Lyanna Lamine stepped out in a crisp black pantsuit, hair slicked back, heels echoing like judgment on the marble floor. Behind her walked Tate Vidine, tie undone, expression unreadable. Together, they looked like trouble. Like power and consequence had finally come home to rooftop Mira. Tate's assistant gawked. David from PR choked on his coffee. Someone in accounting audibly gasped. Lyanna walked past them all without flinching, head high, lips set in that signature Alamine determination. Tate walked beside her like a silent promise, until Mr. Vidian. Mira stammered, "There's a press leak." He stopped. "What leak?" "The Alamine Foundation statement and photos of the two of you together." On the balcony last night, Lyanna's eyes met his. The war had officially begun, and now it wasn't just between them. It was them versus the world. Vidian press room 2 hours later. Well, cameras were already flashing when Lyanna stepped up to the podium. She wore white, an intentional choice. Pure, sharp, bold. The kind of white that made headlines and carried fire underneath. Behind her stood Tade, silent and immovable, dot across the room. Journalists buzzed like hornets around a cracked hive. Was it true? Had the senator's daughter betrayed her family? Was this an affair? A vendetta? A romance? Lyanna didn't wait for questions. She looked straight into the cameras, shoulders squared, heart steady. "I will speak once, clearly, and then we return to work." The room quieted. "I am Lyanna Elamine, daughter of Senator Abdul Rahman Elamine, Chief Strategy Officer at the Vidian Group. And yes, what you've seen is true. I am in a relationship with Mr. Tade Vidian." A ripple swept the room like a gust of wind through tall grass. She continued, "This is not a scandal. This is not a betrayal. This is the evolution of two people who have spent years clashing, building, challenging, and, finally, seeing each other clearly." A reporter shouted, "But what about your father?" Lyanna didn't blink. "My father and I are aligned in some ways and deeply divided in others, but I do not live in his shadow. I live by my values. And if love is the weapon they choose to use against me, then so be it. Let them come." A flashbulb popped. Another voice, bolder. "Are you saying the senator disapproves?" "I'm saying my life is not his battlefield." Behind her, Tade folded his arms, proud, unreadable. "Ready?" Lyanna's voice softened now, intimate but strong. "Let me be clear. I did not fall in love with my father's enemy. I fell in love with a man who holds me accountable, who argues with me fiercely, who sees all my sharp edges and never once asks me to dull them. We are not perfect, but we are not afraid." Silence held the room like breath before a plunge. Then another question, one like a blade. "What does this mean for the Elamine Foundation, for your alliances?" She inhaled. "It means we stop pretending that power doesn't come with a price. It means I'm no longer playing pretend to keep peace at family dinners. I will continue to serve, but I will do so transparently, truthfully, and unapologetically." She stepped back. Tade stepped forward. No speech. Just a hand placed lightly at the small of her back. A simple public gesture. She isn't alone then. He looked at the cameras and finally spoke. "We're done hiding." Seen that evening, Elamine Estates Senator Abdul Rahman watched the press conference alone, the glass of whiskey in his hand untouched. His phone buzzed, calls from colleagues, messages from donors. One from his wife. She looks just like you. When she's angry, you should be proud. But pride was not the emotion sitting in his chest. Not yet. He clicked on a news headline. Love or legacy. Lyanna Elamine burns the bridges of silence. He read every word, watched every frame. Then finally, he whispered into the quiet room. Voice thick. She's not a little girl anymore. And then, slowly, he smiled. A rare, dangerous smile. Good. That night, the city didn't sleep. Screens flickered with her face. Pundits dissected every frame of her speech. And hashtags surged across social media like fire through dry grass. Hashtag Lyanna Unleashed. Hashtag VIDIN Affair. Hashtag Daughter of Power. But inside, the quiet walls of the Elamine estate, silence reigned. Lyanna stepped out of the car alone. No guards, no entourage. It's just her heels clicking softly on the marble path. The housekeeper opened the door without a word. Everyone had seen the news. She made her way to the study where her father waited standing, hands clasped behind his back, gazing out the window into the darkness. He didn't turn around when she entered. She closed the door behind her. No cameras now. No press. Just father and daughter. Two versions of pride standing on opposite ends of a war they didn't ask for but had. Learn to navigate. He spoke first. You could have warned me. She folded her arms, jaw tight. You could have listened to me 2 years ago when I said we couldn't keep playing both sides. Still, he didn't turn. I built a reputation, a legacy. You just turned it into spectacle. Her voice sharpened. I turned it into honesty. Finally, he faced her. Their eyes locked. Same fierce gaze. Same iron beneath the surface. You think standing next to Tade Vidian on a podium makes you powerful? She stepped closer, chin high. No, standing beside someone I love without shame does. That's something you never taught me. That hit? He flinched, barely. But he didn't look away. Do you love him? He asked, voice low, double quotes, yes. And if I say you've embarrassed this family, I'll remind you that silence is not. Dignity and obedience is not love. He walked past her slowly, shoulders heavy. You've made your choice. She nodded. So did you, years ago when you decided truth was a luxury. He paused at the door. Don't come home looking for safety, Lyanna. Not anymore. She looked at him, calm, resolute. I came home to tell you I'm not afraid of you. Then she turned and walked a weak step, echoing louder than any threat he could ever make. Outside, the night was cold, but her breath steamed with something warmer than fear, conviction, and somewhere. Behind another window of another tower, Tade watched the city skyline and whispered into the dark. She did it. And then he smiled. The war wasn't over, but it had a new general. The elevator hummed as it climbed the 62nd floor of the Vidian Tower. Inside, Tade leaned against the mirrored wall. Tie loosened, jacket slung over one shoulder, but his eyes never left the digital screen tracking the floors. He was waiting for her when the doors slid open. She was already there standing, barefoot in the corridor. Heels in one hand, hair unpinned and wild from the wind. Neither of them said a word as he stepped out. Their eyes locked like they had in the boardroom. Years ago when she'd first challenged him on a logistics budget and refused to look away. This was different. He dropped the jacket, she dropped the shoes, and they met in the middle of the hallway. With a silence that said everything. His hands found her face again, reverent this time, as if seeing her all over. The strength, the defiance. The woman who'd just gone to war with her father and didn't blink. You didn't have to do that, he said softly. I did, she whispered. For me. For us. For every time I sat silent at dinner tables and bit my tongue. Tade traced. A thumb over her cheekbone. You lit the match. I don't believe in waiting for permission anymore. His smile was slow, hungry, a little in awe. I love you, he said. Finally, It hung in the space like a confession and a claim. Lyanna didn't flinch. I know. That's why I didn't run. She pulled him inside the penthouse, locked the door behind them, and leaned back against it as if anchoring herself in the moment. His tie hit the floor first. Then the buttons of his shirt slow under her fingers. Her blouse followed, one sleeve slipping from her shoulder as he kissed the hollow of her neck. No rush, no panic, just the deliberate unmaking of two people who had carried too much for too long. He kissed her with gratitude, with hunger, with the weight of 1,000 what-ifs collapsing into now. Her fingers threaded through his hair, pulling, claiming, breaking all the rules they'd written on glass walls and boardroom chairs. She guided him to the bedroom, their path littered with fabric, and when he laid her down, he didn't ask for permission. She'd already given it. They moved together in silence, desperate, reverent, consumed, until breath gave way to tremble, and tremble gave way to stillness. After. Her head rested on his chest, his fingers drawing lazy circles on her shoulder. The city roared beneath them. Phones buzzed. Headlines updated, but in this room, there was only the rhythm of their heartbeats sinking after years of collision. Tade exhaled. What now? Lyanna looked up at him, eyes clear. Now we build something that no one can burn down. And he believed her, because she'd already walked through Firand, walked out untouched, by morning. The vultures were circling in the polished halls of Parliament, where every inch reeked of old power and older secrets. The emergency session convened like a silent ritual. No cameras, no microphones. Just men and women in designer suits whispering names like weapons. At the far end of the chamber, seated beneath the nation's seal, Senator Abdul Rahman Elamin adjusted his cufflinks with mechanical precision. His face betrayed nothing. But inside, his legacy was bleeding. She's dangerous now, murmured Minister Jaji, sliding into the seat beside him. She always was, Abdul replied, voice like steel underwater. I just didn't expect her to turn it against me. The door creaked open. Heads turned. Lyanna walked in, no entourage, no father's shadow. It's just her in a navy suit that matched the blue fire in her eyes. She walked like someone who had nothing, left to loose on everything to say. The speaker cleared his throat. Miss Elamin, this is a closed session. Lyanna stood firm. I'm not here to ask. I'm here to remind you that the people you serve don't live behind bulletproof glass. A ripple of discomfort moved through the chamber. She thinks she's a reformer, someone muttered. She thinks, Lyanna cut in, that none of you have ever been afraid of the truth. And that's exactly why it terrifies you now. Her father stood. This is not your place. Lyanna faced him, calm as moonlight on steel. Then make room. The silence was volcanic. You dare stand here and undermine years of diplomacy and sacrifice, he began. Years of silence and secrets, she corrected. And you do it for what? For a man whose name still triggers investigations on 2 continents. She didn't blink. I did it for every daughter told to shrink so her father can stand tall. A long pause. Even the speaker leaned forward now, breath held. And if that means I burn every bridge your empire ever built, she said softly, then I will light the match myself. Then she turned and walked out unshaken, untouched. Later that night, in a corner of the Vidian penthouse, Tade poured 2 glasses of scotch and handed her one. She took it, staring out at the sea of lights below. I declared war today. No, he said, raising his glass. You declared independence. They CLINKED. Outside. The storm was just beginning, and inside the firelight of their private rebellion. Lyanna smiled like someone who finally knew her own name. 3 days passed. Lyanna's face was on every screen. Praise from students, outrage from the elite, think pieces dissecting her words. But nothing prepared her for the knock that came just after dusk. Not at the Elamin estate, not at Vidian Tower, but At the quiet apartment where she sometimes went to breathe, a space no one but Tade and one old friend knew about. She opened the door cautiously and froze. Standing before her was a woman cloaked in silk and silence. Regal, composed, and every bit the myth Lyanna had heard about but never expected to meet. Amaranta, Gideon Tade's mother, the matriarch who once commanded global tension from Geneva to Accra, the widow who vanished after her husband's death, the strategist behind the original Vidian Empire before illness, grief, or scandal pulled her underground. She held no bag, no phone, just a silver cane and eyes that saw everything. "May I come in?" Her voice was warm but laced with something sharper. Lyanna stepped aside slowly, heart-pounding dot inside. Amaranta moved like she still ruled kingdoms. She examined the modest furnishings with no trace of judgment. "I built palaces," she said after a moment, "but this is where real decisions are made." Lyanna watched her carefully. "Why are you here?" "Amaranta sat without being invited because my son has chosen you. And because the world is now watching." She looked up, those hawk-like eyes softening. "Slightly, you remind me of myself, but smarter, louder, bolder." Lyanna sat across from her, shoulders straight. "I didn't do any of this to be admired." "Of course not." Amaranta nodded. "You did it because no one else had the spine to speak. And now the empires tremble." There was a pause. Then Amaranta leaned forward. "But trembling isn't the same as falling. And if you don't learn to play the game behind the game, they will crush you slowly, not in daylight, but in dinner parties and closed accounts. In whispered scandals and sudden audits." Lyanna's voice was steady. "Then teach me." That made Amaranta smile. Truly smile for the first time in years. "I thought you'd never ask." At that moment, Tade entered the apartment, stopping dead when he saw them. His mother, Two Storms sitting across from each other in perfect stillness. He didn't speak. He just stepped inside, shut the door, and poured 3 glasses of water. No scotch tonight. They were done celebrating now. It was time to build. 3 nights. Later. A secluded villa in the hills outside the capital. The air smelled of oud polished, wood, and aged betrayal. 12 men and women gathered around a crescent-shaped table. Former ministers, oil barons, ex-generals, and heirs of dynasties untouched by elections. A council that didn't exist. Not on paper, not in law, but their word had shaped nations. And tonight, their concern was a 27-year-old woman who had shaken the spine of legacy itself. "She's igniting the wrong kind of loyalty," murmured Alhaji Bako, swirling a glass of crimson liquor. "Poor people love her. Students adore her. That's how revolutions begin." "She's sleeping with Vidians, boy," hissed Madame Oyalala, draped in violet silk. "He was always a danger." Now he has a mouthpiece. A retired general leaned forward, voice gravel and ash. "Do we end her cleanly or destroy her slowly?" A younger member, barely 40, the son of a telecom empire, offered a tighter option. "We kill the myth, not the girl. We leak what we have." He opened a file, photos, documents, fabricated half-truths laced with enough real scent to bleed. University scandal, hidden accounts, a whisper of foreign money. The group nodded. "The public doesn't need truth," said Madame Oyalola with a smirk. "They need a reason to stop believing." The decision was made at sunrise. The leaks would begin. Meanwhile, in the heart of Vidian Tower, Lyanna stood before a wall-sized screen, watching the live data feeds spike and fluctuate. Hashtags twisted. Traffic surged. The algorithms twitched, like nerves sensing incoming pain. "They've started," Amaranta said behind her. Calm as glass. Tade leaned against the railing, eyes hard. "We expected this." Lyanna said nothing. She simply turned away from the screen, walked to the glass balcony, and stared out at the sleeping city. "They will come for everything," she whispered. "Not just my name, my friends, my history. They'll turn my victories into shame. Amaranta joined her. Let them try. You don't fight ghosts with facts. You fight them with light. Lyanna turned, confused. What do you mean? Tate answered this time, his voice lower. She means it's time we leaked something. Amaranta nodded. Something real. Something. That burns cleaner than their poison. Lyanna narrowed her eyes. Like what? Amaranta gave her a long look. How much are you willing to lose to win? Lyanna didn't hesitate. Everything. The next morning, before the Forge scandal could take hold, Lyanna Elamine went live on her own terms. A full video confession of every real mistake she had ever made. Every financial backing she'd accepted, every moment of doubt she'd faced, she didn't flinch. She didn't blink. And she ended it with a line that would haunt the old guard for years. You want to bury me in secrets? I will hand you the shovel and name the soil. But understand this, the more you dig, the more truth will grow. Within hours, the public backlash boomeranged. Instead of scandal, they found integrity. Instead of shame, strength. And in the villa on the hill, silence reigned. The empire had struck and missed. The marble hall, Elamine estate. Scent of burnt incense clung to the air as Senator Abdul Rahman Elamine stepped into the ancestral hall. He hadn't set foot here in over 5 years. Not since his wife's passing. Not since the dreams he once buried in Lyanna began to resurface in ways he could no longer control. But today, he had been summoned by Amaranta Vidian. She stood near the central colonnade, draped in obsidian lace, her silver cane resting against a carved lion. Portraits of Elamine ancestors loomed behind her. You're bold, the senator said flatly, his tone lined with warning. To call me here like some errant page boy? Amaranta didn't flinch. She turned, slowly. And you are blind, Abdul Rahman, if you think the world still moves beneath your feet alone. Silence thickened. You think I don't know how many of your allies sat at that hilltop council? She continued. You think Lyanna doesn't see the same treachery that once nearly destroyed your career when you first dared to speak truth in? The assembly. His jaw tightened. She is young, he growled. Naive, reckless. That speech she gave? She's put herself in the crosshairs of every old enemy I spent 3 decades appeasing. Amaranta stepped closer, her voice now colder, sharper. She did what you were too afraid to do, burn the illusion. The people don't want appeasement anymore. They want reckoning. She is still my daughter. She was Amaranta. Corrected. Until you chose legacy over truth. The words hit like a slap. He turned, pacing. I protected her. I kept her away from all this. Amaranta's cane struck the marble once. Sharp, deliberate. You hid her. And she found the light without you. Now the question is, will you oppose her or join the fire before it consumes everything you built? Scene, Vidian Tower, rooftop garden. Midnight Lyanna stood barefoot on the dew-soaked rooftop, wind pulling at her curls. Tad joined her quietly. He came, he said she didn't turn, and he argued, defended, blamed, then left. She closed her eyes. I didn't want to destroy him. You didn't, Tade replied gently. You freed him. She turned to face him, tears unshed, fury calm. I don't want to lead a rebellion, she whispered. I want to plant a future. Tade stepped closer. Then let's begin, not with protests, with policy. He handed her a folder. Inside were signatures, students, activists. Even 3 former ministers. A proposal for a national youth sustainability assembly. Not a protest, a governing body. One rooted in grassroots leadership, climate justice, corporate accountability, and Lyanna. At its helm, she stared at it for a long moment, then nodded softly. Double quotes, yes. The launch of the Youth Sustainability Assembly Unity Hall, Central District A. 1,000 paper lanterns floated above Unity Hall, swaying like stars in the windless sky. Inside, the great dome pulsed with golden light. Rows of students, activists, and reform-minded leaders packed the hall. Across 5 continents, the event was being live-streamed in 18 languages. At the center stage stood Lyanna Elamine. She wore white, not as a symbol of peace, but of clarity, of transparency. Her voice rang steady as she spoke into the mic. We are not children demanding favors. We are citizens demanding future. Not tomorrow, today. A wave of applause, a chorus of chants. History was breathing, but behind the velvet curtains, a storm was forming. Scene, backstage, security feed room. Tade watched the monitor's eyes, scanning. Amaranta stood behind him, arms folded. We've swept the perimeter twice, said the head of security. But Amaranta frowned. Something didn't feel right then. One of the cameras flickered. A face appeared obscured beneath a long scarf. Slipping through a staff corridor, Tade narrowed his eyes. Reverse, zoom in. The image cleared, and froze. It was Kelad Joro, once Lyanna's university mentor. Once her greatest supporter. Now a disgraced former senator ousted after a corruption probe Lyanna herself had exposed. He shouldn't be here, Tade muttered. Amarant, turned, already in motion. Stop him quietly. No panic. If he gets to that mic too late, scene. On stage moments, Lauder Lyanna smiled. The final musical interlude played. A youth choir from Kano singing in haunting harmony. She reached for her cue cards for the closing statement when, bang, the side door burst open. Security lunged at to slow. Kelad Joro strode onto the stage with a wild, calculated grin, a handheld mic in one fist. The room fell silent. Some recognized him instantly. Others waited in confusion. He raised the mic. You speak of sustainability and justice, Lyanna. But let's tell the world how your hands are not clean either. Tell them how you rose by silencing your own. Gasps. Tade charged toward the stage, but Lyanna held up a hand. She walked forward. Calm, unafraid. She took another mic and looked him in the eye. You mean when I refused to let your land grab bill pass? When I exposed your offshore laundering? When I protected the students you tried to intimidate? He faltered. The crowd buzzed, phones were up, live streams blazed. You taught me to fight, she said softly. But you forgot to teach me fear. Khalid lunged, words failing into shouting. Security tackled him down. Roar of relief. But Lyanna didn't gloat. She turned to the crowd. Let tonight be the proof. When the old power strikes, we do not bow. We respond with light. And the crowd erupted, chanting, clapping, light, light, light. From that moment, the assembly was no longer just a movement, it was a revolution. Scene, aftermath rooftop, hours later. Lyanna stood in silence, staring at the city lights. Tad joined her. They'll keep coming, said. She nodded. I hope they do, she whispered. He tilted his head. Why? She smiled faintly. Because. The more they come, the more people will see us standing. Assembly headquarters. 2 weeks later, the atmosphere at Assembly HQ was electric. Walls covered in maps, youth strategists working late into the night, voices humming with purpose. But behind the glass conference room, different storm was brewing. Lyanna sat at the head of the long oak table. To her left, Tade. To her right, a rising voice within the movement, Zariah, an eloquent climate lawyer with a following nearly equal to Lyanna's. We can't just advocate for land justice, Zariah said coolly. We need to occupy it, the southern oil fields, the forests. We reclaim them. Or nothing changes. Lyanna frowned. Reclamation without policy invites military retaliation. The people get hurt first. Zariah leaned forward. The people are already being hurt. Your approach is noble, Lyanna, but too slow. These corporations are polluting today. They're bribing today. The assembly needs sharper teeth. The room felt tense. DADE shifted. We can be sharp without becoming reckless. You're calling for direct land action that's months ahead of where we are. Zariah stood and smiled. A revolution that waits too long isn't a revolution, it's a seminar. She walked out, papers in hand. Lyanna stared after her. Something in Zariah's tone wasn't just passion, it was strategy. Scene. Vidian Garden. Midnight. Amaranta sat alone, sipping tea beneath the jackfruit trees. Its moonlight dappled the white stone path. A shadow appeared behind her. She didn't turn. I wondered when you'd come, she said. Senator Abdul Rahman El-Amin stepped forward slowly. She's not just building a movement, he said. She's building a nation within a nation. Amaranta finally looked at him. Then help her. He exhaled. I tried, but her fire won't bend. Not even to me. A pause. Then Amaranta said, it's not meant to. We weren't the architects of this world, Abdul. We were just its caretakers. Poorly trained. Now, they're rebuilding. From the ashes. And yes, they may burn too hot. But if you still love your daughter, stand with her. He looked away. I don't know how. She took his hand gently. Then, start by listening. Seen Zariah's private meeting, secret location in a dimly lit lounge. Zariah met with a group of influential figures. Young tech billionaires, disillusioned former politicians, and radical organizers. At the head of the table sat Rafi Okoye, a former student leader once jailed for inciting protest violence. Now a secretive investor in political insurgencies. She's too soft, Zariah said, to bound to procedure. Rafi leaned back, amused. And you're ready to replace her? Zariah didn't blink. Not replace? Redirect. He studied. Her. Then nodded. Then let's make you visible. Scene. Rooftop. Lyanna stood overlooking the city again. This time, her posture was heavier. Tad brought her coffee. She's building a Splinter group, he said. Social feeds are picking it up. Lyanna nodded. She's smart, charismatic. I knew it was coming. Tade hesitated. We can. Still shut it down? No, she replied quietly. Let her speak. Let her gather. If we silence her, we become what we stand against. He studied her. You're not afraid of her? Lyanna shook her head. I'm afraid of the world she might build if we're too proud to work with her. Closing scene. National broadcast teaser. 2 days later, televisions across the country flickered to life with a surprise promo. She challenged the government. Now she challenges the assembly. Join Zariah Chaik this Sunday for her vision of a new revolution. Lyanna sat watching it from a darkened room. No words, just resolve in her eyes. The next storm was coming, and this time it had her own flag. Wind rustled the rooftop garden as Lyanna stood alone facing the skyline. Below, the city shimmered with artificial stars, neon, halogen, steel. She could hear the muffled buzz of her team still working inside, planning next week's summit. But her mind was elsewhere. Tad appeared behind her, quiet as always. He placed the latest report in her hands but said nothing. She didn't open it. Instead, her voice was low. She's not wrong, you know, Zariah, about the urgency. Tade leaned against the railing beside her, arms folded. But she's wrong. About the method, he replied. We're building bridges. She wants to burn the boats. Lyanna turned to him. What if the boats deserve to burn? Silence stretched between them. Distant traffic murmured like waves. Siren, a car horn. The hum of the city trying to heal itself. She's got Rafi behind her now, Tade finally said. They're preparing a media blitz. She's recruiting from our core chapters. Dakar, Kuala Lumpur, Brasilia. Lyanna closed her eyes. Not fear. Not frustration, a kind of grief. We lost Nairobi this morning, she whispered. They released a statement of neutrality. Tade's jaw clenched. Zariah's forcing them to choose. A beat. I need to see her, Lyanna said. He turned sharply. That's dangerous. She's not who she was. Lyanna shook her head. But I am. A rooftop cafe at the edge of the Southern District. Late afternoon sun burned orange behind glass towers. Zariah sat in a wide rattan chair watching news footage on a muted screen, her own face front and center. She didn't look up when Lyanna approached. They sat across from each other in silence. Just the sound of wind against umbrellas, and a single waiter pouring hibiscus tea. Finally, Zariah spoke. "You're brave to come alone." "You wouldn't hurt me," Lyanna replied. Zariah looked her in the eyes. "That depends on what you mean by hurt." Lyanna didn't flinch. "You're splitting us," she said. "You're giving the corporations exactly what they want. Infighting, chaos, 2 movements, 1 mission." Zariah's laugh was low. Not cruel, just tired. "No, Lyanna, you split us the day you decided slow diplomacy was enough. You still believe in tables, but the table was never ours." Lyanna leaned in. "And what are you building, Zariah? A movement or a war machine? You say you're for the people, but Rafi funds private militias in 3 countries. Do you think justice grows in soil soaked with fear?" Zariah's smile faded. For the first time, something flickered in her doubt, perhaps. Or memory. She looked away. "I'm building something that won't beg for approval. You still ask permission." "I don't." Lyanna rose. "I don't ask. I listen. That's the difference." A pause. Then she added, quieter, "Power without memory becomes vengeance." She walked away, leaving Zariah with her tea and her war plan. Later that night, inside Assembly headquarters, Lyanna gathered her inner circle. Maps, screens, data streams flickering across a circular war room. She stood at the center, calm, but sharp-eyed. "We won't fight Zariah. We'll outgrow her," she said. "How?" Amaranta asked from across the room. "She's louder. Faster." Lyanna pointed to a screen where new grassroots chapped. Urs were forming rural townships, fisher communities, urban art collectives. "We go back to the ground," she said. "Back to the soil, to the stories. Let her chase headlines. We build roots." Everyone went silent. Then Tade nodded slowly. "We stop broadcasting and start listening again." Lyanna looked at him. "No, we do both." And just like that, the tide shifted. Not with noise, but with presence.